the whole afternoon just vanished. There was a another Women's World Cup game where the ebbs and flows and the tension and the different things happening, which, first of all, we both really like ODI cricket, and that's a key factor in ODI cricket is just how the tension and the momentum switches and moves and wiggles this way, wiggles that way, and then it just resulted in a enthralling Sunday afternoon where the White Ferns lost to England, and it was a bit sad because fortunately and unfortunately, a lot of my observations and intuition around the White Ferns have proven to be correct. And it's a nod of approval to my intuition, which is always nice to have that reinforced, but it's a bummer for the players. And we'll get deep into this White Ferns game, but I'm just curious, like, how did your Sunday afternoon experience feel tracking that White Ferns game? Back-to-back Women's World Cup games in Auckland as well at Eden Park, which of course all these crowds are, restricted, but it's still the same buzz, the same kind of amplification of the arena, the Coliseum that we've seen around Aotearoa with this Women's World Cup, and just the fans and the mixture of fans, like young girls, young boys, parents, just cricket fans themselves. Like the Indian-Australian game was just Indians loving cricket, and they're all there to support India. So I think what I'm getting to is a first question: how did that game yesterday fit into your wider Women's World Cup experience, which might not be as tuned in, tapped in as myself, but this World Cup is pretty fucking amazing, eh?
Yeah, this World Cup has been incredible. I'm glad you mentioned the ODI thing as well, because I hadn't thought about that specific angle. Because this is what ODI cricket can be, where it's like, I know that there's reasons why that all the formats can coexist. It's not a drama. It doesn't have to be one taken away from others. However, it often has been, because ODI cricket's kind of been squeezed out by people trying to organize things, because you can make the same amount of money in half the time with the 2020, where, same crowds, but perhaps even bigger crowds because it's shorter. But the point of ODI cricket is that it's a one-day international. It's supposed to last all day. You get 50 overs in because that's the nice volume of what you can fit a match into. And they really do ebb and flow. It's 2020. It's not often a team gets behind and then can come back in front. And then I think about this with penalty shootouts in football often. It's like the first team that misses, there's still time for the other team to miss one and then come back in. But you don't often get that third momentum shift. Generally, one team misses and another team misses, the first team's probably just going to go on and win. You very rarely get it going back and forth any more than that. Test cricket's kind of similar, just because it's so long that the best team tends to win out in the end. But ODI cricket really is in that sweet spot where it does ebb and flow and go back and forth. And this World Cup has just been insane for the entertainment value, the quality of the games has been unreal. So many close finishes. Unfortunately, the White Ferns seem to be involved in most of them and seem to also lose most of them. But incredible games of cricket either way, And that has been, that's been amazing. I've watched as much of it as I can. I've been tuned in throughout the whole thing, probably not watching it as closely as yourself, where it's your job to follow it a bit closer than I do. I get to get away with that kind of thing. But the unreal entertainment value. It's just a shame that the White Ferns haven't scraped over the line, and a couple of those close wins tend to be on the wrong end of these thrillers. But it goes far beyond that. I watched it that incredible game the other day between, I think it was Bangladesh and the West Indies, where Bangladesh bowled the West Indies out for about 140 odd and then lost, I think, didn't they, in the end? But a really close, low scoring ODIs are always amazing, because the wickets can fall so much more regularly. It's just there's this looming danger always in those things. But yeah, a fantastic World Cup, unbelievably entertaining World Cup. Just if the White Ferns could have won a couple of, if literally even just one of those games, probably would be enough to get them through the semifinals. But alas, that's not what has been undertaken.
And when one is deep into these White Ferns mangroves, deep in the nitty gritty, it really is not surprising that the White Ferns have lost these close games. Like at some point, you generate your own sporting karma, you generate your own, well, it's just a winning mentality, right? Like we hear it all the time in different sports. We need to learn how to win. We need to win crappy, you know, the day where it's pissing down, you're playing football, you're playing rugby, it's a shit game, you're playing shit, everything is shit, life sucks on the sporting field, and you find a way to win. Those are deeply ingrained in winning teams. The White Ferns, as we've discussed ad nauseum, I've written about it numerous times, the White Ferns do not know how to win, and that goes back to at least 2018. Basically, we can boil it down to the coach Bob Carter and his coaching staff. I just saw Jacob Orham's returned home, so there might be a family issue there. So I don't want to be stink to him, but he's part of it. All the coaching staff is part of it. And the White Ferns have consistently lost games. So you threw up the lack of star players, the lack of a full strength first 11 throughout that period, which is a very reasonable point. They have also only played the best teams in the world, Australia, England, South Africa. And those are all fair points. And those are all reasons maybe why not to be too down on the White Ferns. However, you develop losing habits. You're not winning games. You're not building up confidence, and you're not generating like just a winning mentality, a rugged, gritty winning mentality. And when we think about these White Ferns selections and the players that aren't there and how they've selected on potential and how they've selected younger players who haven't really done anything in domestic cricket, how does that build a winning confidence when everyone involved knows that the best players aren't there? And that's something I've been thinking about. Like if you're in a sports team and all these athletes are playing in the domestic scene, right? Like all the, like whatever team context you want to put it in, if you're in a team and you know that the best players are not selected due to some weird decisions or political wrangling, whatever it is, that dents your confidence that you can win. I think it's the opposite of like if you're lacing up alongside Kobe Bryant, you're like, yeah, we've got a chance today. Yeah, we got the GOAT, whatever it is. If you're lacing up like Cameron Smith, you're like, holy shit, we're on today because we got Cam Smith. We got the best player in the world. I've experienced that in my own sporting context where you're in the changing room with some of the best players of that sport in New Zealand, and you just know, like, we've got this player, we've got that player. We can't be fucked with. If you're dealing in the opposite of that, and you're like, well, the best players aren't here, it's a bit sketchy, like there's a lot of responsibility on me, that creates a snowball effect that I don't think is conducive to winning. It's not conducive to a winning mentality. And this is a key message I want to outline, because a lot of these losses have been quite close for the White Ferns in the World Cup. They have competed strongly to stay in the game, to get into positions of strength in the game. Ultimately, they have lost all these games. And I think that comes back around to not establishing the winning mentality, for losses to be acceptable over a long period of time. All that stuff seeps into your culture. It becomes ingrained in your environment. It becomes embedded in your environment. And that is to me, that's the crux of the issue. And I've mentioned bad juju a few times in relation to the White Ferns. If you're making all these decisions that appear blatantly silly, you're generating a losing mentality, all that stuff, but you're also fucking with like the cricketing gods. And all that bad juju has come to be evident in this World Cup. Like whether it is the narrow losses that are part of like a losing mentality, or little instances like Sophie Devine having a back spasm while she's batting. What, like, if Sophie Devine bats out that innings, sixes are flying all around Eden Park for sure. But the White Ferns under Bob Carter have generated such bad juju, not to mention all the development contract stuff, all the talent identification stuff, like that goes into the mixer for bad juju. And then that bad juju is manifested in these big games. Leah Tahuhu, hamstring injury. Like, it's just weird how all that stuff has come together. Like, it's not, you can't predict such things, but the red flags were evident, and have been evident for years now. And it's a very strange culmination of all those red flags, and also very strange how so many people overlooked those red flags. They ignored those red flags. And I just want to chuck up one thing here, Wildcard, before I throw it back to you. Some of the stuff on Cricinfo is just like straight up like weird. The difference between perception and reality. This is the opening sentence of the like post-match yarn on Cricinfo. A strong 12 to 18 months in the lead up to the World Cup on their home soil has somehow culminated in New Zealand being the first top side all but knocked out. A strong 12 to 18 months. In 2020 and 2021, Aotearoa played 17 games with 2 wins and 15 losses. I don't know about you, Wildcard, but that is not a strong 12 to 18 months. That is the complete opposite. But there is a perception, and that perception was helped by dominant performances in a warm-up series against India. In a warm-up game against Australia, people conjured up these false realities. And I was kind of pondering the difference between long-established trends and a quicker frenzy that we've seen to start 2022. Turns out those longer trends are actually correct.
Yeah. I hadn't read that Cricinfo thing. That's nuts. Like, you don't even have to do that much research to see this either. Like, it's not. If you follow the team in any way, like you know this. You've seen that they've lost a lot of. They've played a few again, like you said before. Like a lot of that time was there was at least one, if not two, of like the big four missing out injured. They played like mostly just the best teams, so they were always kind of second favorites, but they also got smashed in a lot of those games, and it's not like they were playing to their potential anyway. And one warm-up series against India shouldn't have changed any of that. I would even go a bit further and say it's not even that these red flags were ignored. I just don't think they were even being looked for in the first place, because ignored implies that they were seen and then ignored. You know, like you saw them, you acknowledge them, and then you decide not to focus on them. I don't even think they were seen. I just don't think the team has had enough. Like the spotlight of this World Cup has brought it into focus in a way in which, like, if you put the spotlight on this team in any time over the last 2-3 years, it would have been just as obvious, if not even more obvious. It's taken this home World Cup, everyone paying attention, all these incredible game of cricket, getting people watching, and as available as it's ever been in terms of like broadcasting. It's felt like, because they have definitely had a big boost in the last year or two in terms of like the profile of the White Ferns. Some of that is New Zealand cricket putting them up on more of a pedestal finally. like, remember, this is a team that actually won a World Cup about 20 years ago. You know, it's not like they've been mugs and all this time in between, but they're finally getting a bit of focus. You know, players like Sophie Devine and Susie Bates are being like, you know, held up as like, you know, major parts of New Zealand cricket's advertising stuff and marketing and things like that. Like, they're being put on the level where they deserve to be, as, you know, superstars of world cricket. But like, and I think that probably the most consequential as well of these things is the Spark Sport deal. Like, moving to Spark, they've put more of a focus as well, and part of it's branding for themselves. You see this a lot with corporate things who, you know, corporate entities who make it out like they care so much about like social issues, when in reality, like, you care about them because it's good for business. I'm not saying the people involved don't, but like, a corporate entity, a company, doesn't have feelings. It's not a person. You can't say like Nike cares about Black Lives Matters. Like, no, people who work for Nike do. Nike's not a company. It's a bunch of, I mean, Nike's not a person. It's a company. It's an imagined thing. It's a bunch of pieces of paper going through thing. You know? But like, for sure, Spark have put the White Ferns on a better platform, which is great. But it sort of felt like most of the focus they were getting was based on that. It's like, look at this, like, women's cricket deserves more focus, and so it's getting more focus. But that was the extent of it, rather than the next step of being like actually treating them like a legit team, where we should have been anyway. But like, I just don't think those red flags were focused on in any way or even looked for, because it was a bit more of a I don't want to like just chuck out like gimmicky words or anything like that, but it was I just think that they were yeah, we never even got to the point of ignoring them, because I think the focus was just a little bit more on presenting them in the first place rather than critiquing, and things were just like, I mean, at no point during Bob Carter's reign has this looked like a team that could play to their potential, like a team whose players are like notably improving at the rate you would expect them to, at the rate where you feel like this team is achieving what it should be achieving with no pressure, like no kickback, no pushback, none of that stuff. And maybe we're coming into like a little bit of a perfect storm now, because it's all exploded at a World Cup, which is just a damn shame, really, because the team should have performed so much better. They should have been in a better position coming into this World Cup, better preparation. We've seen with these close defeats that it's not the fault of the players as like the talent of the players. That's not the issue. They're good enough to be making semifinals, but potentially even going further. They're good enough to have won all those games, and they falter in big moments. Why is that? Like, there's probably because of bad coaching, bad preparation, bad selections, bad juju, all of them things like mixed up together. It's small margins when you're losing games by 3 runs against the West Indies, 2 wickets against South Africa, 1 wicket against England. Those games are as close as it gets, and they've come out on the wrong side in all of them. That stops being bad luck and starts being a pattern after a point, and it's a pattern that just fits into what they've been doing for 3 years prior. So they, like, nobody held the team, and I think, to be honest, I think most of this falls on the coach. Like, I don't want to be singling people out necessarily, but I just find it hard to look past, especially when you're looking at this team bottling it late in games. Although bottling is hard as well, because actually it was England who were bottling that game yesterday. White Ferns have been out of all 3 of those games to a point where it felt like they were long gone, and then they fought their way right back into where it was like, oh, well, we might actually win, and then they lose. And throughout that, you're looking at little camera shots of like Bob Carter sitting there with a like grizzly face and his dark sunglasses on at 8 o'clock at night or whatever. And like, it's not the most inspiring sight. It's just, yeah, I find it hard to look past it. But again, like, these were red flags that, yeah, I don't think were ignored, but should not have been ignored, should have been acknowledged and dealt with at any point over the last couple of years. People should have seen the trajectory and didn't. And this is what happens. Now it gets to the point where you've wasted an incredible opportunity at a home World Cup because you allowed certain things to fester, you know what I mean?
And the biggest message that I'm trying to outline is, as you said, the players were, I like, because a lot of people are going to look at the performances and be like, the fuck are the players doing? You know, like how the batting order crumbles, or how there's a misfield, or how they're not quite bowling the right areas and all that stuff. People are going to watch the game and think about the players. No, like being deep in the mangroves, as you said, the players are doing their best. They're doing their best in spite of all the mixed messaging, the confusing selections, the confusing development system. Like, that is all a shambles. Everything except for the players is a shambles. And that, like, this idea has been like in my mind throughout the World Cup, but against England, it was crystal clear because the players responded to losing Devine. The players responded to losing Lea Tahuhu. And that, to me, tells me a lot about the playing group and what this all meant to them, what playing at Eden Park in front of their fans meant to them. Like, the players did their very best. The players displayed tremendous mana in all these performances. As you said, it was the players who got themselves back into the games as opposed to losing the games. And to me, there is a clear difference between what this playing group was able to do, despite of, or in spite of, all the shambles around them that has dictated this losing mentality, that has dictated this losing culture. The players kept showing up. Like, it was a bit weird. Like, I was trying to process how positive the players looked, you know, despite being in some really precarious positions at this World Cup. But that just tells you the players are able to keep a positive mind frame. The players are able to stay connected with each other and put out their best performances on the field. But the players have been let down by all the other bullshit. The players have been let down by the shambles around them. And that's kind of the saddest thing. And all that shambles has been there for years. All of that stuff has not, as you said, that people didn't even notice the red flags, which is it's quite sad for the playing group. And especially when a lot of these players, like, don't think Susie Bates, Sophie Devine, Amy Satterthwaite, Lea Tahuhu, Katie Martin, I don't think they're going to be there for the next World Cup. And they got a World Cup on Aotearoa soil. A lot, like, they took Amelia Kerr, Sophie Devine, they took mental breaks from cricket. Susie Bates had injuries. Amy Satterthwaite and Lea Tahuhu had a child as well as injuries. Then they come back in alignment for the World Cup. But they're let down. And that's the bummer, and that's sad. But I think we have a clear case of mismanagement. We have clear case of what it looks like to allow bad habits to fester, to allow losing to fester, to not see the red flags. And we can all learn from that. I can learn to trust my intuition. Cricket fans can learn to trust the red flags that are there. Like, there's so much learning that we can do here. Unfortunately, it is at the expense of the general White Ferns campaign, which leaves me intrigued as to how Kiwis are going to follow the rest of this World Cup, because I hope, I'm positive, my positive mindset, I'm trying to speak it into existence that Kiwis rally behind these like semi-finals and finals of the Women's World Cup and I think they will, because like everyone's frothing for live sport at this stage. Like, you could see in those games at Eden Park, their fucking Aucklanders were like caged animals. They were just ready to get out, and like all the kids were like looking for the camera and all that shit. Like, everyone in Auckland was just fizzing for live sport. So I hope that plays into how Kiwis and live audiences support the rest of this World Cup, because Aotearoa is not going to be a factor, and the players are not to blame for that.